Hi everyone, it's me, Arden Lee, and it is June, so happy Pride Month. And while it is still Pride Month, I wanted to talk about how my queerness and my non-binary identity intersect with my identity of being a twin flame, being a person who is on the twin flame path. I want to talk about how polarity and queerness can intersect in a person's identity. I made a post about this on my blog and on my socials, and a number of people expressed to me that they were glad that I spoke up about this, because so often what we think of as being the twin flame dynamic has been presented to our culture in a way that is very heteronormative, right? The way that we end up talking about polarity, especially in a lot of new age spiritual circles where you get a lot of that, where people are maybe more likely to talk about twin flame stuff, right? since this is a concept that has been appropriated by the new age spiritual community. And so much of what is taught about twin flames is a distortion. Because I've found in my own experience being in a lot of new age spiritual circles, there are a lot of people who will start to sort of have a little bit of an awakening, and then they'll be like, oh, I got it. I understand all this. And then they'll take all of the things that they learned in their conditioning in a white supremacist, cis, heteronormative, patriarchal society, and they will try and fit that conditioning into these teachings that they are learning, right? So when we talk about polarity in the twin flame path, and we talk about things like the divine feminine and the divine masculine, these two oppositional yin-yang energies that flow and mirror one another. So many people will be like, aha, that means that in order to be a twin flame, you have to be straight, right? Which is not the case. Not the case at all. But I thought this would be a good opportunity to address that. So, and since there was some folks who resonated with it, I thought I'd come on and make a video. So that's what this video is going to be about. And here's what I want to say. I've already made a bunch of videos on the twin flame path, so I'm not interested in going back and unpacking everything. They're in my channel. You can definitely find them. But let's talk about polarity, right? Polarity, as I understand it, is not a binary. The binary would say you can either be this or you can be that, right? Polarity is saying there is a spectrum, right? I love to picture an algebraic number line when I think about things like these. There is a spectrum, and here is this polar end, and here is this polar end, right? But there's a whole distance between them, and your mirror is simply whoever is equidistant from the 0 point as you are, right? So essentially, being on the twin flame path and availing myself of the information that was on the internet that was available to me when I was trying to figure it all out was very frustrating. I encountered a lot of transphobia, a lot of people out there saying the transgender agenda is trying to destroy the twin flame dynamic, right? They're trying to convince everyone that there is no gender, and that you know they're vilifying the divine feminine and masculine, and twin flames must come back and reclaim this, which honestly sounds a lot like it sounds a lot like contemporary white neo-Christian just patriarchy, right? Just dressed up in other language. And that was frustrating to me. There is really no room for transphobia in Awakening. Like, how are you going to have an awakening and then be like, no, that person is not allowed to have the identity that they know themselves to be, right? It's just ridiculous. But the human mind will certainly backwards rationalize, and it will try and fit the things that it wants to be true, right? It'll try and fit everything into the box that it wants to perceive it in, right? So that's just kind of what we're dealing with when we're, unfortunately, when we're dealing with humans who are speaking on subjects incorrectly, right? Taking authority commanding authority that they have not actually earned through the pursuit of knowledge and wisdom. And it is what it is, unfortunately. But I'd like to come on and have a conversation to try and correct that, right? So polarity, right? Polarity is the idea that there are these two opposites, but there's a whole range of expression between them, right? And this is a model of reality. I don't think, again, we want to look at the textbook sort of model and then use that as inspiration in order to locate ourselves, but we're all human expressions, right? Like Plato's cave, none of us is going to be that perfect. None of us is a perfect model textbook anything, right? But we are all expressions of this sort of mathematics. I hope that makes sense. And about this time last year, I publicly claimed a non-binary identity, and I thought long and hard about what that meant for me, and I decided that the fact that I do not feel especially attached to my gender is sufficient for me to feel that non-binary is a better expression of my identity than cis, right? Cis meaning that you identify as the gender that you were assigned at birth, right? As the sex that you were assigned at birth, I should say. So I was born into a female body, right? And I accepted that kind of without a lot of question. Like, oh, there we are in school, and it's like the girls are lining up and the boys are lining up, and it's like, I'm a girl, that's where I belong, okay. But I very strongly feel that had I been born in the body of a man, I don't think that I would experience dysphoria around that. I think I would still be pretty androgynous. I think I would still wear makeup and be in a band, right? I can very much see the type of boy that I would have been. I don't think that there's no part of gender that feels so important to me that I feel it necessary to resist what I was assigned. And I understand that there are other people who don't feel that way, and I very much support them in finding the gender expression and embodying the gender expression that they best feel at home in. For myself, I just don't feel all that attached to it. So because of that, I claimed a non-binary identity last year after lots of thought, lots of discussion with my mentor, Grant Morrison, who also has had a lot of really interesting thoughts and conversations also on gender and on what it means to be non-binary. I will let them speak for themselves on that matter, but I'm very grateful for some of the conversations that I had with them because it really helped me solidify it. And yeah, I think there's probably a number of people out there who are like, wait, you're non-binary. How are you a twin flame then, right? If you're a twin flame, you're supposed to be your divine feminine and calling in your divine masculine. Well, maybe, right? But what is my divine feminine, right? It's an expression of me. And here's the main point that I want to make about this, right? What I said on one of the posts the other day is, these people who think that the twin flames must be these polarized expression. I said, did these people not study algebra, right? Because we're basically looking at a mathematical model. So wherever you are in your identity, right, in your expression, and we're talking about gender in this video, and I'm talking about gender and sexual orientation. I also identify as bisexual, even though I feel most strongly about I feel most compelled, I feel most strongly about connections with those folks who are sort of a mirror image of me, right? So as me being a non-binary person / woman, right? I accept the term woman. I just don't feel I don't feel that my identity is attached to it, except that I happen to have been born this way in this lifetime, right? But I accept woman, it's fine. It's not inaccurate to describe me this way, in my opinion. It means for me to be attracted to my mirror image, to be attracted to my twin flame, means that I am most often compelled, most strongly compelled toward relationship with people who are either cis men who happen to embrace androgyny and have a strong feminine side in the same way that I embrace androgyny and have a strong masculine side, or to mask-leaning non-binary folks. Basically to the person who is the polar opposite of me, the mirror image, right? So who is as much masculine as I am feminine, and is as much feminine as I am masculine, right? So if you were gonna like put feminine and masculine at these opposite ends, right? Well, then I'm a little closer to the middle, and the people that I'm most attracted to are also closer to the middle. I'm not totally in the middle. I don't feel like I'm like 50-50. Some people are, and that's cool too, right? But even if someone was, then, well, they could also attract a twin flame, right? If I'm like maybe like a like a +3 and a -3, if we're looking at that imaginary algebraic number line, then a person who's maybe like a +1 or a -1 or even a 0, for them to attract their mirror, it's simply a different mathematical equation, right? So I just want to say this, that if you're a queer person, if you're a non-binary person, and you've been thinking like, oh, that twin flame stuff doesn't feel accessible to me, well, I don't blame you, A, because of the way that it has been so distorted in so many circles. But B, what it means to call in a twin flame is just that you're calling in someone who is a mirror image of yourself for the purpose of self-knowledge, for the purpose of growth, for the purpose of harmony, and for the purpose of that, in my experience, that really strong charge that is between two people whose polar expressions are equidistant in that way, right? I think that is why the twin flame connection can feel so very strong, because it's like a battery, right? That's a metaphor, right? But there's just a certain harmony that when you meet someone who is, shares that same energetic signature, that same frequency as you, right? Is on the same line, but mirrors you. In my experience, there's a very strong charge that comes with that. So I just wanted to have a little conversation because, you guys, we live in a universe of infinite possibility. And if you understand the twin flame dynamic as a mathematical equation, which it is, then if you're looking at things like an XY axis, right? There is always going to be someone who is your mirror image. There is always going to be someone who is your polar opposite, right? For me, as a bisexual, non-binary femme, I want to say too that I identify as bisexual. I probably, technically, the term would be better if I used pansexual, because I have been attracted to folks of all genders and all expressions. So, but I choose bisexual because of my love of buffalo check flannel and motorcycle boots. So it's funny how these terms, take on these or other sort of cultural meanings, right? And the ways that I sit in chairs too. Anyway, so if you were to locate me, right? If we picture that XY axis and it's like, well, how feminine versus masculine are you? And that's maybe my x-axis. And maybe my y-axis is like, how attracted are you to men versus women, right? Then there's going to be someone who's going to be exactly opposite me in that other quadrant, right? I also want to say that our identification is also, it's not just the raw material of what we are. that's certainly part of it. And as society becomes more tolerant, my hope is that it will get closer to us being able to identify that way. But I want to point out that I do believe that there are cis men out there who, if it were more encouraged for them to be more exploratory toward their gender and their sexual orientation, might also identify as I do, right? As a femme person, and as one who has been conditioned in a lot of sex positive circles, there's, at this point in my life anyway, there is almost zero repercussion for me identifying as bisexual and non-binary, right? For a man in my position, that might not be as true. If there were the same stigma around sexual orientation and as if I were growing up with that same stigma, and thankfully that stigma is less now, right? But if I were growing up with that same stigma that gets placed on those folks who are born in male bodies about what it means to be gay, right, or be too feminine, yeah, I might have lived without that, right? So I also want to point that out, that the way we identify is a product of who we are, how we're made up, and how safe and or encouraged we feel to identify in certain ways, right? So I'm not necessarily gonna say call in a twin flame who, it's just gonna be an energetic thing, right? It's just gonna be an energetic expression. I might or I might not, right? But yeah, if I end up in a twin flame relationship with someone who identifies as a cis man, I won't be surprised, right? It would be very easy for me to identify as a cis woman. It's just I think a lot about these things, and because I don't feel attached to my gender, I identify as non-binary. So there we go. Anyway, I hope that all of that was clear. Yeah, it really bums me out that there are queer folks out there who have been shamed away from pursuing the twin flame path, if that's what they want, or locked out of thinking that they could have a dynamic like that. I just want us, again, everything on that XY axis is valid. We live in a universe of infinite possibility, and if you can locate it on a map, I guarantee there's a person out there who is expressing themselves in that format. And to be a twin flame just means, for me anyway, that I am most compelled by and drawn to relationship with people who are a sort of reflection of a mirror image of me, of my polar expressions, and that I have chosen to pursue that path so that I may bring myself more and more into balance, right? And I don't think I need to I don't think we necessarily need to do that with our gender expression. It doesn't mean that you have to be like a perfectly 50-50 non-binary person to be in inner union, right? You just want to make sure that you are that you have attained wholeness, that you are not grasping for something outside of yourself. The twin flame path is very much about seeing what resonates for you, and in terms of that person that mirror image that you are attracted to, and being able to give yourself anything that it is that you're feeling you want from them that they're not giving you, right? So that you can reach that wholeness where you're not dependent on, where you're not in that scarcity thinking, oh, if they would just, then my life would be great, right? We want to be able to create our reality and give ourselves those things, right? So, because as I've said, it is when we are in the having of things, right? It's when we are in the having of something that we are also able to attract it outwards. And that is the key to the twin flame path. And anyone can do that, no matter what your identity is, right? So I hope that's clear. Thank you guys. Happy Pride. And yeah, let me know what you think. Have you met any queer twin flames? Are you a queer twin flame? Has this opened up more possibilities for you that maybe you didn't consider before? Let me know in the comments. Thank you guys for watching. Happy Pride, and I'll see you next time.